loving it here so far. It's been a great experience. The people are real kind and welcoming, and it's warm, beautiful environment. How spacious everything is, how nice the homes are. The weather's been good so far. It's not as hot as you might think it is, so I'm loving it here. Yeah.
I'll be retiring within 3 to 5 years, and I'm looking for some options outside of the United States. I'm interested mainly in the apartments and also possibly the land and having development there.
Now, so far on this tour that I've experienced a lot of interesting occurrences here. This property, just as it sits right now, holds a lot of promise. The amenities that have been placed in the viewing home and also what's available for us is really on par with future, not backdated, which is good.
Zesso Global is, first of all, very professional. They've provided me with lots of opportunities to see different places that I can not only purchase but rent. just a way for me to be a part of the up and coming new Ghana.
I can say for sure that this tour exceeded my wildest expectations. Being able to see from the countryside and the city and the hills in Ghana has given me a great perspective and idea of what to appreciate.
We had the opportunity to host members from the African Diaspora Network coming to Africa for the very first time, showing them
Thank you very much. Thank you very much to everyone that's joined us here today. I just wanted to play that video really as just to showcase what's out there, what's out there really in the market as well for you all. And I'm very glad and happy to be joined by my fellow SOS alumni here as well. Thank you very much, Melissa and the team at SOS SGIC for putting this together. And perhaps actually I'll give you the floor as well to set the table and introduce yourself and your organization as well to the audience. Thank you very much. You're mute. You're mute.
Hi everyone, my name is Molisa Mkoni. Thank you for taking time to join this webinar. I'm the Alumni and Public Relations Officer at SOS AGIC. And the Alum Office launched this new initiative in collaboration with Cecil Global to bring you monthly webinars, starting with this one. So now I'll hand over to Kweku to talk about the webinar and maybe introduce the rest of the team.
Okay, sure. And I was just putting up the alumni page here for those that want to check it out as well. I love what you're doing, and it's very important to I think really galvanize any alumni, certainly a very esteemed alumni like SOS is. So thank you very much for the opportunity. I also then give the floor to our lawyer Emmanuel Matikole to just introduce himself, and then we'll delve into his presentation as well. Feel free to ping your questions in the chat. We might just stop and answer these questions as he's going through the presentation as well. So thank you very much. You're on mute as well. You're on mute.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you for the opportunity. And I'm delighted to be making this presentation again. I think the last time was a few weeks ago. So my name is Emmanuel Sakite Matekole. I'm the managing partner and head of the real estate and infrastructure practice group at MNO Law Consult. MNO Law Consult is a full service law firm located in Jolu, Accra. We've won a number of awards in the real estate sector. I think for 2023 and 2024, we were judged the best real estate law firm in Ghana by the Ghana Property Awards. And then quite recently, I won an award for excellence in strategic law firm leadership. So I guess we are being recognized and noticed. So the presentation is on buying property in Ghana, and essentially we'll go through the due diligence process and also the other post-closing requirements. Next slide, please. All right, so the question that essentially we'll be answering are, how do you secure your interest in land? And how do you protect your land and prevent others from taking away your land? Now, with land ownership, because it's an asset that can outlast you, you ought to understand that you have to be continuously responsible for ensuring that you safeguard it. So when I say it can outlast you, what I mean is that you can pass it on to your successors. So if you do not give them a good title or you do not do the right things, you will be creating trouble for them, because it will be difficult for them to safeguard your interest in the land when you are no longer around to essentially speak to the facts, assuming an issue should arise. Next slide. So there are 3 stages of a transaction, a land transaction. We have the pre-closing, closing, and post-closing. All these stages are very important, but I consider the pre-closing even more critical, because in law, we are more concerned about how you came by something more than even the outcome. So what I mean is that the total outcome of ownership is land registration. That's what signifies that you actually own the land. But the courts are even more concerned with how you, the process you use in acquiring the land than the land certificate. And that's why in some cases, some land certificates are set aside because they may not have followed due process. Next slide, please. So due diligence, what do we mean by due diligence? Essentially, it means conducting your investigation to confirm whether you are buying from the right person, to confirm whether you can use the land for the purpose you intend to use it for, to confirm whether you have ground rent, utility bills, etc. have been paid on the land, and also whether the statutory consents that are required have been obtained. Next slide. So the due diligence required when purchasing land. So there's a difference. So there's land which doesn't have a building on it, and there's land which has a building on it. So for our purposes, let's limit it to land without a building on it, because if there's a building on it, then there are other things that we have to be looking at. So bare land. First of all, I advocate that the first set that I think is most material before you even before you make any payment or when you commence a transaction is such as the Land Use and Spatial Planning Authority. We call it sometimes the zoning authority, and this is why. So we have all the lands in Ghana are required to be zoned. So there are planning schemes for every area. And some areas have been zoned for farming, some have been zoned for cultural purposes, some for commercial, some for residential, some for civic, some for industrial, many other purposes. So you cannot situate your residential property or your dwelling house in a commercial area. If you do so, it means that your development or whatever you put up will be illegal. That building can be demolished. And also, if you do so, you'll be going against the scheme. And what the scheme says is that, or what the law says is that, the law is that if you take a grant, and that grant allows you to do something which is contrary to the planning scheme, it means the grant is void. So if you are able to acquire this property and register it, and you use the land for a purpose for which the land has not been designated for, your certificate can be set aside in court because of just this, because of flouting this particular rule. So it's imperative that you do a search to find out whether the Land Use and Spatial Planning Authority has designated your area for the purpose you intend to use it for. Then after that, you do a search at the Lands Commission to confirm whether the person you are purchasing from is the rightful owner of the property, whether the land is encumbered. When I say encumbered, what I mean is there a mortgage on the land? If there is, it should reflect in the search. Then there's a search also that I would recommend that you do if such a secretariat exists in the community you intend to purchase the land from. So the Customary Land Secretariat is a secretariat that essentially records customary interest in land. And these interests may be reflected at the Lands Commission or may not reflect at the Lands Commission. That is why it's important that you drill even further down to conduct a search at the Customary Land Secretariat to confirm if you are dealing with the rightful people. Then a litigation check is obviously very important because we need to confirm if the land is, under litigation. And if it is, we need to know what orders the courts have made in respect of that land, etc. Because whatever orders the courts have made, if you buy the land, you are supposed to abide by those orders. So it's important for you to know exactly what you're getting yourself into. Then you have to request for the documents of title, judgment, like I just said, and site plans. Now, the title documents are important because, for instance, when you buy land, you are buying from somebody. So that person may have an interest. That interest could be allodial interest. Allodial interest means you own the land forever. Or it could be a customary freehold, also meaning that you own the land forever, but subject to the allodial interest. And then we have usufructory interest, which is also ownership and perpetuity. And then we have leasehold interest. So not to complicate things, most of the interests we buy are leasehold because leasehold is the most common. Now, if you are buying from a leaseholder, it means that that person has a limited duration of time. So for instance, they bought the land in 1974 for 99 years. It means that they may have spent about 40 years. My math is not too good. So let's assume they have used up 40 years of the 99 years. That means it's left with 50 years. But because they don't know how to calculate it, they would say, I have 99 years. And then they start counting from the present day. And then they will tell you that I'm going to give you maybe 70 years. When by the calculation in the document, you cannot have 70 because they don't even have 70 to give you. So it's important for you to establish all these facts. And these are common mistakes people make. So although it looks very simple or very elementary, it's a common mistake that I've been seeing. I've been coming across it a lot. So it's something that you ought to take cognizance of. Ground rent search, property rates, utility bills are very important because these are called liens. They create liens on the property. And what happens is that even if you buy the property from somebody else, these encumbrances or liabilities run with the land. So you buy the property, the person will may get out, exit the transaction because they've sold their interest in the property, but you will still have to bear that burden of paying these bills, which you may not be responsible for. So it's important that you do these checks before you make full payments for land. National House of Chiefs is very important because under our law, yes, chiefs can sell land, but a chief cannot execute a document, a legal document, if that chief is not registered at the National House of Chiefs. Because once your name is not registered at the National House of Chiefs or gazetted at the National House of Chiefs, then it means that you are not supposed to be performing the official duties of a chief. And official duties of a chief involves signing legal documents. So if, for instance, you are going to enter into a transaction and it comes to me and the chief is involved, I would recommend that we do a search first to confirm whether the chief's name is gazetted. If the chief is not gazetted, then we need to find somebody whose name is gazetted to sign a document for you, because that document would be unenforceable because it has not been signed properly. And in law, when documents are not signed properly, it means that you cannot enforce them. A search at the traditional council is key because in our historically, people were not good at keeping data like we do now. They never reduced their ownership into writing. The boundaries were never written down. They used landmarks like rivers, streams, stones, trees to demarcate their property. And with time, these demarcations that they used, when they disappear, the boundary, then the boundary disputes arise, because the thing that used to demarcate that area may disappear or may change over time. And so it brought about boundary disputes. And these boundary disputes are settled or dealt with by the traditional council, which consists of the paramount chief and lesser chiefs. So if you do not know this and you go and transact with a stew, or what we call a kingdom, and they have this dispute with another chief and they don't tell you, you would end up buying the property and later finding out that you paid the money to the wrong person, assuming the issue is resolved and the boundary, you fall in another stew's boundary. A collateral registry search is also important because it's a way of also checking to see whether there's an encumbrance on the property. When I say encumbrance, I mean a mortgage or something of a similar nature. Next slide, please. And if I'm moving too fast, let me know. If I'm moving too slow too, I would appreciate some feedback on that. You can send a text. The persons authorized to sell land in Ghana are the stew, which I just said, which is a community that has a chief, or let's say a king. And then a family can sell land, but clearly without the head of family, the family cannot do so. So you need the head of family with the consent and concurrence of the principal members of the family. The state can sell land because the state owns land, and then obviously individuals and corporate entities can sell land as well. Now, all these entities, although they can sell land, there are strict rules on how they can sell these lands. So they cannot sell the land outside of these rules. So let me give you an example. For instance, with the stew, it says that the land ought to be sold by the regent, caretaker, or occupant of the stew. And this must be done with the consent and concurrence of the elders of the stew. So if any of these things, these elements are missing, you ought to know that the court will declare the land sale void.
And Emmanuel, just so there's a question here that maybe even we can
let me
touch on.
ask. Where is the question?
It just says here, hello, I'm considering buying land outside Accra. The seller has freehold interest registered in a corporate name and is offering me the freehold as an individual Ghanaian citizen. It is a plot in a community. Is that okay? I mean,
Yes, that is one of the exceptions to the rule. So the general rule is that if families, clans, stools cannot sell freehold interest. However, individuals and corporate entities who have freehold can sell their freehold interest. So that is an exception to the rule. So yes, you are lucky they are getting a freehold interest because it's rare to get that kind of interest nowadays.
fair enough. Let's go to maybe another question from another attendee.
Okay.
Where does one go to conduct all those recommended searches you mentioned just in the past slide? Where does one?
Okay.
Yeah.
So okay, I see the question now. Where does one go to conduct all these recommended searches? So can we go back so that I can just yes, if sorry about that. Yeah. So the Land Use and Spatial Planning Authority search is done at the local assembly. So the local assembly is the municipality, or let's just call district assembly or municipal assembly. So you go to a relevant district assembly or municipal assembly and you do the search at the assembly. There's a department called the Department of they issue development permits. And also they also issue building permits. So they are responsible for doing this search. Then the Lands Commission search is done at the Lands Commission. The Customary Land Secretariat search, if they have a Customary Land Secretariat, you have to inquire. But if they do, some of these people have offices. Some families have offices where they if you want to buy land, they have an office. They will sign the document. They have a stamp and everything. Some of them are very professional. Some of these people have a record of the transactions that they have done over time. And if you pay the requisite fee, they can furnish you with the search reports. Litigation check is done at the High Court, particularly the Accra High Court. If your land is in Cape Coast, you can do it at the Cape Coast High Court. If it's in Koforidua or Ebri, you can do it at the the High Court in Koforidua. The property rates, utility bills, property rates, you get the bill from ground rent search. So ground rent, you do it at the Office of the Administrator of Stool Lands. So if the land is family land, clan land, stool land, you do that search at the Office of the Administrator of Stool Lands. If the it's property rates, you do it at the local assembly again. And then utility bills, you do them if it is water, you use a Ghana Water Company Limited, and if it's power, you go to the Electricity Company of Ghana Limited. National House of Chiefs, there's a National House of Chiefs in Kumasi. That's the only place that you go to, is the National House of Chiefs. It's in Kumasi. So anytime I want to do the search, we have to travel all the way to Kumasi to do the search there. And then traditional council is within the locality. So for instance, if you go to maybe the Kumasi area, there's a traditional council there. If you go to the Bogatanga, they also have their traditional council, and they have an office. So you go there, you file a search, you have a secretary, and the secretary will give you a report. And then the collateral registry is at the Bank of Ghana. So yes, these are the relevant agencies that carry out these searches.
And yeah, I think no, that was very concise. Thank you. Another question from Wu is on average, how long does this all take typically, or how long does it take to go through this process on average?
Well, it depends. It depends. I mean, for me, the search that I've had challenges with in terms of duration is the zoning search, which is the land use and spatial planning search, simply because a lot of the areas are not zoned. I'm talking about lots of areas outside the Greater Accra region are not zoned. Or even if it's in the Greater Accra region, if it is not in the prominent ones like East Legon, Laboni, Cantonments, Airport, and stuff like that, some of these areas are not zoned. So what they do is that when you file the search, then they want you to take them to the property, and then they use the buildings and the things they see as indicators to determine whether the area should be residential, commercial. So it's like at that point, then they start developing a layout for the area. So with that, sometimes that search is a bit challenging, but I always insist that it doesn't matter about, I insist on following due process rather than pursuing speed, because if you follow due process, it's very difficult for someone to challenge you. Even if you don't get results, you can always adduce evidence to show that I go to court. So when I'm speaking, I always contemplate that I might be standing before a judge to explain something. So you always have to be able to adduce evidence to show that you have exercised, the word is, you've been prudent. You should be able to show the judge that you have been prudent. So if you write your letter to the zoning authority and they don't respond or they don't give you an answer, that is the extent of your obligation. You cannot go and work in that office and give yourself a report before you purchase the property. So with that obligation being discharged, the court will see that you have done what a prudent person ought to have done. And that, I believe, is a standard that you have to meet. So it's not about getting the results necessarily, but it's about being able to demonstrate that you have done what the law requires that you do. That's your only obligation. So yes, apart from that search, all the other searches do not take more than a month. Apart from the land use and spatial planning search, all the others do not take more than a month to do.
No, thanks for that. And I guess there's a question here, I think which would have been directed to our friend at the Lands Commission, who unfortunately
okay. Well, it says the inefficiencies of the Lands Commission is a major blocker for investors. Why do things like land papers constantly appear to get lost in your offices, requiring middlemen, unnecessary payments, and extended processing times to close very simple things? How is Lands Commission planning to become more efficient? So, let me say this. It's important for us to understand that if you belong to a society, it's your obligation to ensure that that society works. I have a lot of friends at the Lands Commission. I'm doing transactions with them, but I have sued the Lands Commission in several cases. I have gotten injunction against them in several cases. I know the lawyer, when he sees me in court, he says, hey, you again. I have sued the district assemblies in several cases. I need them, I work with them, but you ought to ensure that they are carrying out their obligation. If you don't, if somebody has misplaced your document, you have a right to sue them and ask for damages. And also, it also serves as a record because it will show that you presented documents to them and it was misplaced. But if there's nothing on the record to show that such a thing has happened, they can deny it. So I've sued everybody that you can think of. It's on my list and I'm still doing it. So if that is the problem, I think that you should also create a problem for them to enable them sit up. Otherwise, nothing will change.
Yeah, I totally agree. And yeah, to your point, we try to work with obviously established law firms such as Emmanuel's, and also work with vetted real estate developments as well, who have typically done due diligence on their properties or land before selling any real estate to clients, right? And again, this is just to avoid any issues or inefficiencies in the market. But to that point, all right, there are folks who want to buy land or property outside of the city centers, etc., right? And so that is when typically sometimes these issues with the Lands Commission or others can occur, right? And of course, the government has noted that they have looked at improving efficiencies here, digitizing some aspects, but there is some way to go to ensure that it's meeting the highest levels. All right, the highest levels that we are used to in the Western world, or some of us are used to in the Western world, right? I will say that, Ghana's history, right, is maybe part of the issue in the sense that, we do have the Lands Commission, if you think about it, has three different periods or eras, right? So this was pre-colonial times, for which, the chiefs obviously own land. There are families that own land, people who tilled land, etc., and how that was done in the customary in a customary way. The colonial period, when of course that's one of the reasons why we utilize today the leasehold and freehold system, because that's the same system used in the United Kingdom as well today. And of course, post-colonial, for which, now we have state lands, etc., and obviously the current iteration of the Lands Commission. And so because of this, at times the information has been siloed in different databases within the Lands Commission, and there are obviously work being done to align all this information. But I think what Emmanuel said is very important, that a lot of people within the private sector have looked at, cleaning up some aspects of this, reputable lawyers such as Emmanuel, real estate developers who've, done due diligence on their developments to ensure that the land there is secure, entitled and registered properly. And of course, CESO as well, we're bringing in our platform as well to ensure that we are bringing in the credible partners and also banking partners as well, right? And so, in fact, our next session will be with a bank, and you'll find that the banks will only give you a mortgage on property that they have done their maximum due diligence on, right, to reduce the risk levels, right? So I think that's all part of it, and I like the answer Emmanuel gave, in the sense that people are buying land in Ghana, people are buying property in Ghana. I think you saw from the video that a lot of African Americans especially, but foreigners in general, are coming in and swooping up a lot of the land there. So transactions are being done, and it's just quite important that you do it with reputable people, and that yes, we all want things done in a speedily manner, but it's much better to do it in an efficient manner, right? And so I agree with that point very much. And thank you for those questions. Great questions. Please keep them coming in, and we'll answer them as the presentation goes forward. But Emmanuel, I'll give the floor back to you to continue your presentation. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Quickly, if you can kindly skip to the slide before, I think after this one. Okay, good. This is a very important point. So this is something that was introduced quite recently in 2020. It's about ownership of land by indigenous citizens and non-citizens. So the 2020 law has basically, let me say, created some categories of persons, and it treats them differently. It gives them some preferential treatment. So you can actually even decide to fall into a particular category if you know how to do so. But because that's not the discussion, let's just focus on what is before us. So the non-citizen is a foreigner, and with the non-citizen, you cannot have a freehold interest in land. It's impossible. Now, for those non-citizens who had a freehold interest, the law converted it in the 1960s. The 1969 Constitution converted that freehold interest to a leasehold interest. So a foreigner, so if you are dealing with a foreigner who claims to have a freehold interest, ought to know that by operation of law, that freehold was converted to a 50-year lease. And then a corporate entity is a non-citizen if 40% or more, or yes, 40% or more of the shareholders are foreigners. Then the law does not imply an automatic right of renewal. So what ought to happen in your case is that in the documentation, you have to state expressly that you want a renewal in the document. And that is the only way. With a citizen, there's an automatic renewal. So that is good news for citizens. And this renewal is only inapplicable when the property is commercial or the property is leased for redevelopment. So if it's a commercial property or is leased for redevelopment, if you're a citizen, you should know that that right is not automatic any longer. So with citizens too, because you know, in order not for you to forget, also just follow the same advice. Make sure that the right of renewal is expressly stated in your documentation. And in there, you can even state the terms of the renewal so that in future, you know, you don't have to now negotiate everything. Then the indigene. Indigene are entitled to automatic renewal, just like the citizen, where the lessee has developed the land for residential purposes, a farm of perennial crops, a commercial industrial property for the same duration as the original lease when the lease expires. So this is very favorable to a citizen, because even with the citizen, the law is even telling you what the terms of the lease are going to be. The term is that it is going to be for the same duration as the original lease when the lease expires. You know, so can we go to the next slide? So this is how these different categories are treated. So preparation of legal documents is key, and this is where the lawyers must come in. So the lawyers obviously will have to help with the due diligence as well, but preparation of legal documents is something that is only lawyers that can do in Ghana. So the law is that because it's an agreement affecting land, it ought to be done by a legal practitioner, and the signing has to be done in a certain way. So, for instance, if it is a stool land, which is a land owned by a community that has a chief, it says that the document has to be signed by the chief with the consent and concurrence of all the principal members. So, all the principal elders of the stool would mean that if there are 10 and you go and get this with the signatures of 5 of them, it means that the document does not qualify, you know, in terms of the law. It means it has breached the law. That's an example. So execution is key in this regard. Okay, next slide. And also with lawyers too, you need to use a lawyer who is in good standing. You can't have a lawyer who has been suspended preparing a document for you. The law says that if that is done, the document is invalid. With overriding interests, these are interests that are not registrable. You can't find them in the Lands Commission's records. In fact, you can only find them or discover them when you actually visit the land. So these are easements and leases for terms less than 2 years, and easements could be right of way. You know, there are certain lands which are burdened. So when I say burdened, you know, there are lands that the electricity cables, water cables and stuff, you know, are passed through them. And in order to get to other lands, you know, there are certain lands that are supposed to be roads. Those are called easements. They are not supposed to be building on those lands. They are there so that others can benefit from, you know, them being there. So these easements are overriding interests, and you cannot find that in the Lands Commission's records or any of the searches that I've advised that you do. The government rights of compulsory acquisition, that you can find, but the right in itself is an overriding interest. It means that you can have an interest in land which you've registered and which you can find at the Lands Commission, but the government can pass a law to take that land from you, and that interest will override your interest. So that's why it is there. Then rights of persons in actual occupation, they have an overriding interest. So if you go and buy property from a person who is married and the partner is not involved, you ought to know that the partner, if they sue, will will have an interest which is higher, which overrides your interest. Adverse possessors in law. Adverse possessors are people who are in possession of land for 12 years or more and whose possession have not been challenged by the actual owner. And the property and utility rates are what I discussed earlier. These things create an interest in the property which override that of the person who may have registered that property. Next slide. So the key takeaways in this presentation are that you should conduct a thorough due diligence on the land that you intend to buy and buy from authorized persons and ensure that you obtain the requisite consents. After that, you ought to register the land. Now, the note of caution is that you have to remain vigilant and approach every transaction as though you were dealing with a dishonest person. And this is because our land sector, and it was created, these problems happened before I was born, but it's been beset with a lot of bad recording, fraud, dishonesty on all sides, on this part of the people who own the land, on the part of the people at the Lands Commission, on the part of the purchasers. And so you ought to have the document. The documents must basically convince you that what this person is saying is true. It shouldn't be merely an assertion that I live here, therefore I'm the owner of the land. But the documentation from the Lands Commission, from the due diligence, from your inquiries and all that is what's supposed to lead you to the conclusion that you should go ahead and purchase the land or otherwise. So I believe it's you can ask your questions if you have any. There's another slide on the escrow, but I don't know if that is part of the.
No, you can speak on it. No worries. This is a question here from Wu, a very controversial question. She asks, so if I build on a land, and if in 12 years no one challenges it, it is mine. Is it mine? I guess is the question.
Well, that's a good question. If you build on the land and you know for a fact, or I can prove me. So assuming I'm the other person. So if I can prove to a court that you knew that I'm the owner of the land and you went to build on it, it means that you have committed fraud. And in law, fraud vitiates everything. So you cannot just go and build on somebody's land. If the land is registered, there's by operation of law, you are deemed to know, even if you don't do a search, by operation of law, you are deemed to know that the land belongs to maybe me because it is registered. So if by operation of law, you are deemed to know that it belongs to me and you go and build on it, I'll just go to court and allege fraud. And what it would mean is that you lose the land and your building will become mine. So it's very risky.
Okay, got it. So yes, we can go into the next slide then. Yeah, please, any questions you have, please feel free to ping it in the chat. Thank you.
I mean, so given the issues we've had with the land acquisition, when I started my journey and all that, we've been thinking, I mean, what can we do? I mean, I traveled to the US to find out the system they put in place and all that stuff. And then we developed a system that would enable us to work with all the people in the ecosystem to ensure that we sanitize the space. So we have the broker, which CESO is, and if CESO is bringing a client, then we would expect CESO to get all the details of the purchaser or the seller and pass them over to us. Now, once we get the information, then we'll ask for ID cards, etc., and then we engage a requisite professional. So we have surveyors in this, we have valuers, we have structural engineers, we have all kinds of people, all professionals in there, building inspectors. I didn't put everybody's name there, but all of these people, I work with them. And If we need a surveyor, we get a surveyor to do the work. We need a valuer, we do that. Structural engineer is very important in Ghana, because the rule requires that when you are building, you need a building inspector to inspect every stage of the building from foundation all the way up to lintel. Nobody does that. So you ought to know that a lot of the buildings that you find around, if they don't use these professionals, chances are the structural integrity is questionable. So we are basically bringing in a system to force people to do the right thing, if with or without the government. Now, with the drafting of documents, we will do an escrow agent agreement where the money will be paid into the lawyer's trust accounts. So this money is what we are going to use to engage all the professionals. So if you have an agreement with a broker that when the transaction goes through, they're going to get a percentage, that money will come from the escrow. You're not going to give it to a broker directly, because sometimes the deal doesn't go through and then you may have already paid and you can't get your money back. If you're supposed to pay the seller or the seller, we have to ensure that the transaction or the execution of documents are done properly. The checks or the searches show that the seller is the rightful person to sell the property. So once everything checks out, then we make payment to the seller. So this is the purpose of the escrow agent agreement. Then there's an SPA, obviously, between the parties, because sometimes you want to pay a deposit in order to secure the property. So the SPA is in place for that. And then after everything has been done, where closing and parties have signed the transfer documents, we are now going to register the documents. Once the registration is done and we are satisfied, we hand over the documents to the client, and then the transaction is done. And we are all happy because we believe, based on what we have done, that we have basically checked all or ticked all the boxes that ought to be ticked. So in a nutshell, this is one way we have tried to sanitize the sector, and I think that it is working. I mean, that's how come we are gaining the kind of traction we are gaining, and we are winning some awards and all that, because the market is responding positively to some of the initiatives that we have introduced. Right.
Excellent
Yes.
stuff. And obviously, for those that wish to connect directly with Emmanuel, please feel free to reach out to us as well. I know that there are a few more questions here as well for you, Emmanuel. So a question, can you please elaborate on how one can ensure that others are aware that land is indeed owned? Would a walled land be sufficient indication that the land is owned?
Yes, that's a very good question. I like that. Yes, a walled land is sufficient indication that the land is owned by somebody. So if you see somebody's walled land and then you jump the wall and then you go and build on it, clearly that is also fraud, because you should know that is not by some divine, that the wall just appeared. It was put up by somebody. So a person who is being prudent would want to find out who put up the wall, and then possibly go to the person and go and find out from the person whether they actually own the land, or maybe whether they do not own the land, but they just put up the wall or something. You need to find out about what is going on. Now, if you go to the person, this person will have what we call an overriding interest, which I just explained to you. Now, if you go and the person tells you that, look, I will not answer you or something, then that is your defense. You can if you bought the land, you can proceed to build, and that is your defense, because you asked and the person refused to disclose their interest to you. So you have a defense. That doesn't mean you win the case, but at least you have a defense. So it's a good question.
Excellent. Yeah, great question. Another question. Hello, if an elderly Ghanaian parent passes on without a will the children inherit automatically? The parent has a non-Ghanaian spouse. What if there is no surviving spouse?
That's also a good question. So if you pass on without a will, it means you've died intestate. Now, there's a law called the Intestate Succession Law. So the inter-succession law is basically giving you a will by force. So the inter-succession law says that if you die without a will and you have a spouse and children, your house will go to your first house will go to your spouse and children, and then basically, let me just put it simply, 3/4 of your property will go to your spouse and children, and then a quarter will go to your wider family. So if you die without a will, what it means is that you are going to be splitting your property with people that you don't know, because that's what the law has prescribed. But if you die with a will or die testate, then it means that your property will go to the people that you want it to go to. So that's the difference.
Okay, thanks for that. I guess another question is just around what would it cost to pay for the services to certify a land?
Yeah.
To
So
certify a
this is
land.
a question. This is a question I know is very important to everybody. I mean, I get this question all the time. The challenge is that it's difficult for me to give a figure when I don't know the scope of work involved, because you see, the thing about land is a land is like a land has its own story. Like, you know, it has been through life like all of us. It has its own story, and so its problems, the two adjoining lands will have may have different stories. So it's difficult for me to give a scope of work based on something that I don't know. But all I can say is, and I can assure you, is that I'm a reasonable person, and whatever fees that I come up with, I can justify it. I can justify my fees. I can explain to you that this is what is involved, this is how much it will cost, this is the time that will be spent on it. Everything that ought to be, I ought to tell you to justify the fee. I am able to do so.
Okay. Thank you very much for that. Thank you very much for that. So okay, so yeah, okay, I guess another question. What if you die without a will? You have an abandoned wife who has kids and a common law second wife who also has kids. How does that work?
So you die without a will. You have an abandoned wife. So when you say abandoned wife, is it that you are married, or what? You married her before you passed on?
The person says yes.
Okay, so it means that the thing about marriage is that it's a contract, and so that contract comes with certain benefits and also certain liabilities. So if you're married to somebody and you passed on, then what it means is that your interest in that property will go to your successors, but that property also belongs to your wife. So in law, they call it tenants in common. You become tenants in common. So when you marry, all the properties that you acquired during the marriage, you own it jointly with your wife, whether you like it or not. And if you pass on, your portion, which is tenants in which you own in common with your wife, will go to your successor. So if you name your wife as a successor, then what it means is that now she will own everything alone. But if you have other successors, then they will come and own it together with her. So those people will replace you. Now, if you have a common law second wife, what I understand from common law second wife is that this is not somebody that you are married to, but this is somebody that you are basically you've cohabited with. That's one, it will be difficult. It has to be proven. It has to be proven in court. And even if it is proven, our law proscribes bigamy. So it is the one that's the first one that was done, legally or through the ordinance, is what will stand. The second one, even if proven, would make the act criminal. So it looks like the whatever succession or whatever there is, it is the first one that basically may benefit, unless you have a will, but it's the first one that will benefit.
Got it.
And
Got
then,
it.
yeah,
Oh,
can you
sorry.
give a range of the cost so we prepare beforehand, minimum at least? Okay, yeah. So I mean, for I can like it can range from um let's say $10 to let's say you know to I mean what I can't put a cap on it, but if you say minimum, yeah, it could range from $10. If I have to review a letter or something, yeah, I could charge $10 for that, so it depends on what the scope of work is.
Okay, thanks for that. A question here. I was put off by other lawyers' estimates that they involved up to 15% of the purchase price of a property. Do you work like this? Thanks.
So we have a scale of fees. We have a scale of fees, and the scale of fees basically states that you ought to pay a percentage of I mean the purchase price. But what I do is that and that is just for drafting the documents and stuff like that. But what I do is that I basically will have a conversation with you, try to understand the scope of work, and then try to work with you to basically see how we can progress things. I don't want to say that because we are supposed to apply the scale of fees, but what I'm saying is that I try to work with the clients because you also need to understand the client's budget and all of that stuff. So yes, that is how I work.
Okay, I guess another question from Flossie. So what if you own property as a citizen in Ghana, but you haven't lived in Ghana for many years and you have foreign residency and you die without a will and you have a Ghanaian wife and a foreign wife as well? It's a very specific question.
So we have to break this down. What if you own property as a citizen in Ghana, but you haven't lived in Ghana for many years, and you have a foreign residency, and you die without a will, and you have a Ghanaian wife and a foreign wife? I don't know how that works. Is this just supposed to be a problem question to make me have a headache this weekend, or or is it a real life situation?
I don't know. I don't know. Flossie, you might have to reach out to us direct for
Yeah.
this. This is a very specific question.
If it's not a real life situation thing, but if it is, then I think you should reach out.
Yeah.
You reach out. Yeah. If it's a real life situation, you should reach out.
Okay, excellent. Okay. No, it's a serious question. I'll meet you in Okay, fair enough. Yeah, it seems very specific. So I think this.
Yeah.
So no problem. Feel free to reach out to us, and we'll connect you directly with Emmanuel on this in particular. I am again very very grateful for the time that Emmanuel has given us here today, and I'm very grateful to you, Melissa, as well for setting this up as well with SOS as well, and everybody here for joining me here today, right? I'll just end it again by saying my name is Kweku Essien, Chief Commercial Officer for Sesso Global. Sesso Global is here to assist you with your real estate needs in Ghana and in Nigeria as well, for those who want to buy property in Nigeria, and also in Liberia. And so you can find us as well, and I'll put up our website here on the screen for you to see. You can find us here as well and find property that you're looking for. We work with over 200 real estate developers in Ghana and Nigeria and all these other places, and certainly we can find you property all over the country, and of course certainly in Accra and its various suburbs as well. We work with esteemed lawyers such as Emmanuel to assist you with the due diligence factor, and also work with several banks as well to assist you with mortgages. We do hope to put together the next session with you all on financing, and so to bring on a bank partner who can speak specifically on the mortgage aspects, and also we can talk about payment plans as well, and perhaps even how you can work with your pension plan as well to to finance a home through that as well, right? And I think these sessions are meant to just arm you with information, right, and assist you with learning a little bit more about what is required, right, to really purchase real estate in Ghana, which has become a very, very hot commodity over the last few years, right? So perhaps, Melissa, I don't know if you have any parting words as well.
I just wanted to say thank you to all the alums that joined in. Hopefully they can join in next month. So I think that's it for me.
Okay, excellent. And Emmanuel, I don't know if you have any parting words as well.
Yeah, I want to thank everyone for joining, and thank you, Cecil and Melissa. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, excellent. Thank you all very much. And like I said, as you can see, it's very, very important to utilize a lawyer for any real estate needs. It is very, very important to work with a lawyer. Even if it's not Emmanuel, please always have a lawyer assist you with that due diligence. It is quite key. And in fact, if you do go through the process without the lawyer, it can affect you in the future, especially if that transaction goes south. So thank you very much to everybody. Enjoy the rest of your weekends. We will send the recording to you all as well. Thank you all and cheers. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye.